Oh, I'm excited. We've got Sam Crosby with us in the Man Cave, and he is going to defend everything this government's ever done, ever will do.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, well, you might have fun here because Senator Matt Canavan, of course, is here as well, joining us from Canberra in the lead up to the budget. And the great Matt Cunningham, stand up, one of our favourites, the best in the business in the territory. And I think I'd put him in top 5 in the country for journos, mate. I'm sorry to put that weight in your saddlebag, but I love you. And I think you're one of the best in the business, not just here at Sky. All right, pleasantries over. So last week we had the Prime Minister with the sort of semi-new hat walking around Beef Week in Rockhampton. I'm a friend of the farmer. Toto loves beef. I'll eventually get to a good impersonation, but you get the point. Did you know that he grew up in a housing community? It was a terrible story. Anyway, he's running around with the farmers, right, pretending I'm a friend of the farmer, and he waits until a few days later and assuming that the farmers are so stupid that they don't have access to the internets or television or radio, and they will completely be okay that the same bloke who pretends he's the friend of the farmer at Beef Week is now going to ban live exports. Now, he was around the cabinet table when it made its overnight decision after watching Four Corners back in 2010. And as we know, Labor, it always goes back to the same bad idea. They've just come up with a different way of doing it. Now, Senator, the claim is this is going to be okay because we're not just turning it off tomorrow, we're doing it over a whole bunch of years, which means that currently the cattle farmers of Northern Australia will be able to just slowly but surely turn themselves into wind farms, and that'll be okay.
Well, Paul, this decision just at this stage affects those sheep farmers that are exposed to the live sheep industry. The concern is, of course, that the animal activists, animal welfare activists won't stop at sheep. They'll move on to cattle next. But it is a cowardly move by this government. As you said, the Prime Minister was there in Rockhampton last week at Beef Week, at a collection of farmers and graziers who were very interested in this decision. A lot of people talking about it because, as I say, they are very concerned about the flow-on effects to the cattle industry. And I'm sure we'll find out, perhaps through estimates, Senate estimates, when this decision was made. And I'm sure it probably was made before the Prime Minister was there, so he knew he had it in his back pocket. But he was just cowardly, he was gutless. There's no other word for it. He was gutless not to tell them up front while he was with them, as you say, wearing the big hat. And then he scurried away, and they dropped this announcement out over the weekend just ahead of the budget, hoping the budget swamps it all. But thousands of jobs now in Western Australia on the line. The WA Premier, the Labor WA Premier, objects to Labor's policy because it's going to cruel a whole industry. And why do we need to shut down a whole industry? I mean, if we want to tackle inflation, we have to become more productive. We have to invest in parts of our economy that are making things, that are making money for our country, that are producing jobs. And there's enormous demand for our high-quality live sheep. They've got an excellent animal welfare record. There's been a few contraventions, but they've been fixed. Excellent in the last few years. There's no reason to do this. The only reason the Labor Party is doing this is because they need the preferences of the animal welfare parties. So this is about protecting the jobs of the Labor Party, and they're going to sacrifice thousands of jobs in Western Australia to do it.
Sam, I'll get to you in a second, but Matt, you remember, you lived it, you reported it, right? When it was about cattle and it was the Northern Territory, about what those consequences were. I'm completely aware that it's about sheep and it's more so specifically in and around Western Australia where there's going to be particular issues. But you've seen this play out before, but if they say it's just a little more notice and a little more time, then it will all end up being okay. What's your sense of it?
Oh, it's already having a massive impact.
I don't think there was a more devastating...
I'm going to call you Senator and Matt. Matt, your turn in Darwin.
He's going to be a senator, I'm sure. That's the progression. Or a mayor or something.
I don't think there was a more... I don't think there was a more devastating decision that a government made that impacted the Northern Territory than this one. And people are still talking about it today, some 13 years on, Paul. In fact, a lot of the people who were affected by the Gillard government's ban on live exports are still waiting for this government to agree to the settlement of the class action that has been running now for more than a decade. But I think the bigger concern here is that now that live sheep exports, the government's committed to banning them, that live cattle is next. And you get an indication of what's coming from a tweet today from the TLMP, Kylie Tink, who congratulates the government for doing this, says it's something the people of North Sydney have been calling for since before the election, and then goes on to say it's disappointing, though, that we have to wait 4 years and there's still no plan to end live beef cattle exports. That tweet will send a shiver down the spine of every live cattle exporter in the Northern Territory. And the prospect of the Albanese government going into minority government at the next election will absolutely scare the living daylights out of them, because it was in 2011 when the Gillard government was relying on the Greens and independents to stay in power that they made that original decision. And God only knows, people will be thinking here, what happens if there is a minority government supported by the Greens and the Teals come 2025? What will happen to live exports from the Northern Territory?
Agree. Animal welfare and the politics of it. Again, many people elected to parliaments exclusively on animal welfare. But by doing it over a long period of time, it may well taper, but it doesn't change the financial pain for the people whose life is completely linked.
No, if you do it well, it won't have much pain at all, because you're going to process the meat in Australia. That's the whole idea, right? You give them 4 years, and I'm sure that 4 years then becomes 4, 5, 6 years.
They're already suffering.
But the idea is that you process the meat here in Australia, and I'm all in favour of that.
In Indonesia, they want to kill the cattle live. The halal killing means they don't want it boxed here.
Sure, but you can do halal here. You can do halal here. Halal is pretty easy, right? You use a knife or whatever, you stun the thing, you use a knife, you say a prayer, you face it east or whatever. It's pretty easy to do to get halal certification wherever, right? But the point is you can do it here in Australia, and that means jobs. If you go to Coonabanabran, which is a little town out in they had an abattoir get closed down there. I don't know, 2010, 2012, something like that. And it decimated the town. Decimated the town. And these are the little sort of towns that we're talking about. If you can build an abattoir there, that employs 40, 50 people. They're good jobs. They're, permanent jobs. Why wouldn't we be in favour of that? And yeah, okay, the animal rights issues, great.
Demonstrates.
But why not, Senator?
This just demonstrates why the Labor Party are so hopeless at business. The customer wants the live sheep. That's what they want in the Middle East. They want them for religious reasons. They want them because they don't have as much refrigeration as we do. So the box beef is not going to do that. Box sheep, I should say, it's not going to do them any good. It's your box sheep meat. And so already, Sam, these countries in the Middle East are going to South America. They can get the sheep elsewhere. They can go elsewhere. They don't need us. And they're already doing that. And so if you knew anything about the sheep industry right now, you'd know it's on its knees, because well before the government shutdown date in 2028, the market's already shifting, and sheep prices now are at record lows. Graziers are having to shoot their flocks. It's terrible. It's very sad. It's having a flow-on effect. I spoke to graziers at Beef Week last week. Some of them are in beef and sheep. And it's already having a flow-on effect to sheep prices in eastern markets, just as the live cattle ban did. This is a complete and utter disaster. There won't be those jobs there in the abattoirs because the customer doesn't want them. And if you're in business, Sam, if you're successful in business, you've got to meet the customer demand. And there's no reason we can't do that with strong animal welfare standards as we've been doing in the live sheep ban. This is a political ban, not one that's based on any kind of science.